What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY in the overall market. I'm going to break down what's going on with the economic calendar approaching tomorrow, talk about some big factors involving the markets, what you should be watching for as time goes on. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Mumu link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. This offer ends in just 8 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about the market. So when it comes to Tesla, overall, the chart is bullish when it comes to the much larger time frames because we have potential to start filling these imbalances. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. This was an accumulation that was developing right over here as buyers have stepped in. There's a lot of catalysts that could help Tesla push a lot more. So in my opinion, Tesla is bullish overall. However, for the shorter term, when you zoom in, Tesla has been dipping a bit as you have that gap below. And I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla does continue to dip just a little bit more before we see some buyers try to defend it and get that push to the much higher levels. So for the short term, there is a risk of Tesla dipping a bit more before it tries to rebound. For the medium term, Tesla still looks bullish nonetheless. It really is that simple. But the question is, to what extent may Tesla dip? That's going to be dependent on where we end up bouncing, in my personal opinion. So I'm going to talk more about the levels in just a couple of minutes, but I want to talk about some news around the world and also what's happening with the economic calendar first. So firstly, just note that tomorrow is going to be Monday, September 23rd, 2024. 15 minutes after the market ends up opening at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the S&P Global Composite Manufacturing and Services PMI reports coming out. This may cause some volatility 15 minutes after market open. Then after that, we have a couple of Fed speakers like Kashkari giving speeches at 1 p.m. and then some bill auctions. Everything else is going to be more minor after that. For earnings, for those who are interested, everything is very minor as well, except by the end of the week, we have Costco announcing their earnings. It might cause some volatility for retail. Besides that, just know that for the market as a whole, greed is making up the majority of sentiment. There's a lot of buyers who are still stepping in. Momentum is still at greed because the market's still holding up very nicely above its key supports, and it's actually at a very, very high level relative to all-time highs. We're still very, very elevated right now, so that's why we're still at greed in terms of momentum. For the puts and call option ratio, it's at neutral because we saw some shorts pile into the markets again on Friday. That's why this ended up going up just a little bit, but I don't think we're too far from approaching that different shift. So this still may continue to fall if the market holds up. We'll be watching this very carefully. And then the VIX is currently dipping a little bit. We have a gap to fill, so this is still at neutral and might actually continue to fall. So we'll see about that. Lastly, the last thing about news about the markets is this. There's been a lot of tension, sadly, around the world. I just want to say that there's a history that goes back thousands of years. I'm not trying to say who started this or someone started that. I don't really want to get into that. My channel is not made around politics or geopolitics or anything like that. But I just want to say that it's very, very intense right now, the situation around the world as the US is getting involved. And this might cause the market to react a little bit. Hopefully, it's nothing too significant. Hopefully, the market does not make a crazy move, and hopefully, things don't continue to escalate. I really hope they don't, but so far, it's not looking too good. I do have a fear in my mind that there may be more tensions geopolitically around the world, especially involving China, the closer we get to the election. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I do have that gut feeling. So I hope things don't get too intense. I hope that things remain as peaceful as possible, and we'll see how things end up going. But this may be a catalyst for the markets, so we'll see what the reaction is. I'll talk about what I think may happen in just a couple of minutes. Just know that volume for Tesla is now at about 96 million. I didn't really see too many headlines come out involving Tesla. There was some talk about how the Cybertruck is selling relatively well, and there's a lot of anticipation of Tesla's deliveries numbers. So far, there's some positive price targets we've been seeing from some analysts. As you guys can see, we actually had some good ratings. Also, right over here, we have, our short volume is still going down, which is not bad for Tesla. And then we have Cantor Fitzgerald, which is neutral on Tesla, but Canaccord Genuity gave Tesla a buy rating. Not bad whatsoever. Besides that, we're doing a good job at holding up. You guys can see we're holding above our key support right over here. That's not bad for Tesla. On top of this, the price price ratio is trending upwards. Tesla's building a lot of strength right now compared to the markets. And then Mondays do have a tendency of being green about 53% of the time historically, so not bad. And then we tend to see more volatility around 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time and also at 1 p.m. So look for some volatility at those hours. That's when Tesla tends to make the biggest moves historically. So, what's happening with the share price? What's my opinion of Tesla? Like I said before, I do anticipate that Tesla will eventually get to the 250s or higher very soon. However, however, we may start off with a small dip in the morning. There was some tensions that are kind of like increasing with the whole politics situations. What's good for the markets is the fact that we did not see futures sell off very hard so far. So that's a good sign that the market may hold up very well for tomorrow, maybe dip a little bit and try to bounce. If we do see a bigger sell off, we have to watch some key supports. That's why you need to be prepared for anything. So here's what I'm watching for. I'm going to go over support and resistance. I'm going to talk about my prediction after that. So if Tesla were to dip, okay, we have this 235 area as our key support. This is very close to our 20 EMA. I think the 20 EMA is going to curl upwards. So by tomorrow, we're going to be seeing 235. If that fails us, if 235 fails us, we could be dipping all the way down towards 231. And then we also have this gap to fill all the way down here, like around 229. And then Tesla should bounce off that support as well, off one of these supports. We have resistance currently around this 240.8 area. If that breaks, we're looking for 244, then 246 for the gap fill. So, what do I think Tesla's going to do? It's very simple. We might be getting very close to like 235 again. Then we'll be watching to see if we bounce off that, start pushing for like the 242, 244 area. Now, if we were to lose support right here around this 235 area, we could be dipping back down to fill the gap, and then we try to get the bounce. So it's going to bounce off one of these two levels, most likely. So a dip and a bounce is what I'm predicting. We either dip to 235 then bounce, or if we dip even more because of geopolitical tensions and other factors like that, we could come down to fill the gap and then get the bounce. I hope that's as simple as possible, guys. We dip down to 235 and bounce. If that doesn't hold us, we dip a little bit lower and then we get the bounce. That's what I think Tesla will most likely do, looking at the chart and also looking at these different structures. All right, so I'll be watching to see which level Tesla bounces off. If it'll be 235, it'll be 229. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's what my view of Tesla is for the time being. For SPY, I think that we are in a very, very interesting place. So we have some tensions around the world, but from a technical standpoint, we are holding up very, very well. Could technicals be delayed because the news just came out? It's a possibility, but not a guarantee quite yet. So from how I see things, okay, SPY is holding this yellow trend line very nicely, but here are some key levels. If SPY dips, okay, we're looking at basically this 565 areas are key supports. If that fails us, we're looking for 563, and if that breaks, we turn more bearish. So 565 and 563 end up breaking, we turn more bearish. Okay, but 563 is the main support. If we're bullish, you want to basically reclaim this yellow trend line and start pushing up higher. If we hold above 568, we're going to remain more bullish. We have this gap to fill all the way up here around this 570 area. So I think what's going to happen is SPY may be dipping a little bit lower. We could be retesting basically the 566 area, maybe it'll come a little bit below this. And then there might be some buyers defending it, trying to push it back up, and they may try to fill this gap later on. So look for a small dip in SPY followed by a bounce as the most likely case for tomorrow, in my opinion. As long as we don't lose 563, I think that's what's going to likely happen. But if we lose 565 and then 563, I will turn more bearish. My view could shift because of the geopolitical situation. But right now, it does not look like the market wants to do that, looking at futures and how technicals look. Right now, the market is favoring. We're going to dip a little bit tomorrow morning, then try to rebound. There might be some buyers trying to defend and fill this gap up here. That is the most likely case as we're holding support. So I find that to be more favorable. For ES, it's the same thing essentially. So one thing worth mentioning about ES is how we're holding support very nicely. But just know this, guys, if we lose this 20 EMA, and I'm calling this out because of this, when you zoom out like this, right? Notice that we have the 20 EMA, the green line right over here. So we're trying to like hold above it, right here we kind of like broke through this. We held support here, we bounced, we held above it, bounced, we held this and bounced, we held this, right? You might think we're going to bounce, but it depends on the level and the reaction tomorrow. So if just hypothetically, right, if we lose 57.34 on ES tomorrow, the green 20 EMA, this is our support, we could be dipping all the way down towards 5,700. That's going to be key for us. If that fails us, I think we come down to fill this gap or get very close to doing so into the 5,600 area. There could be a rug pull if we end up losing 57.34 and 5,700. Just I want to give you guys a heads up about that. If we hold support, if we hit 57.34 and then we bounce off of this and we continue to hold above this area, we have the potential to revisit 57.80, if not 5800. All right, so those are going to be your very, very key levels for this. What do I think is going to happen? In my opinion, we might dip a little bit tomorrow morning, kind of shuffle right here in the lower 5700 area. Then we try to bounce back up and continue to remain range bound for the time being, back up to about 57.80. So I think we might see some range bound price action, a little bit of a dip and a bounce on ES as the most likely case looking at technicals. And we'll see if support holds. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up about this. It's going to be very key and very crucial that we hold support. Otherwise, there could be a dip coming. All right, so watch your levels. We might see a dip and a bounce as the most likely case. Nvidia looks a little bit weak to me. We have 115 to 114 as our support zone. If that fails us, we are going to likely come down to fill this gap. And if that fails us, we'll be dumping a lot more towards like the 110 area. Just want to give you guys a heads up if that support ends up breaking. If we hold 114, we could try to rebound, start pushing up towards these higher levels, like first off like 116 then 118. In my opinion, Nvidia has a double top like structure. There's a double top that's forming right over here, and I think that we could be dipping down to fill the gap all the way down towards these lower levels. So I think what's going to happen is Nvidia might come down to fill this gap towards 114. We could go a little bit lower than this and try to rebound, and then we'll see how things end up going from here. But Nvidia might dip a little bit more, look for a little bit of a dip towards 114 or below, then a bounce after that, and that's going to be the most likely case. For Bitcoin is once again kind of stuck right here. We basically have this 62,718 areas our support. This is going to be the 4-hour 20 EMA. We'll see if this holds or not. As of right now, it's trying to hold up, but if Bitcoin does lose the support, it could be dipping back down towards the lower 62,000 area. If this holds, we could try to bounce for 63,500. My gut is telling me that this may downtrend a little bit and eventually make its way back down to reach 62,763 before it tries to bounce again. So I think it's just going to be range bound right now. We have kind of like a range right over here between the 62,400 area and around 63,500. It might dip and then bounce, continue to consolidate, and then we'll see how things end up going from here. For others out there, we also have looking at NQ. NQ has the same thing going on as ES. So notice that we keep on holding this 20 EMA. We hit this, we bounced, hit this, bounced, hit this, bounced. So we have to bounce off this for us to remain bullish. If we don't hold this, there's going to be a dip coming. I want to make that very, very clear. So if just hypothetically we lose 19,800 on NQ, excuse me, we're dipping all the way down towards 19,700 or below. If we break past 20,000, we're looking for 20,200 as resistance. My gut tells me we could dip back down to 19,800 around this range, kind of range trade like this, before we make an attempt to push into the 20,000 area. I think that's the most likely case. So look for some sideways price action, and we'll see how we end up moving from here. For the QQQ, we have this gap down here to fill all the way down towards 475. If we lose 478, we come down to fill the gap at 475. And if we end up bouncing, we're looking for this resistance all the way up here around 485. So I think what's going to happen is we could dip a little bit on the QQQ to 478, then consolidate. Then there could be a bounce again and an attempt to go higher. It's very possible the QQQ eventually makes its way up to these higher levels, especially as we have this gap to fill at 495. But we might start off with a little bit of a dip tomorrow before we attempt to start pushing up higher. Once we break 485, we turn really bullish. So we're just waiting to see once we get that break. Look for a dip and a bounce on the QQQ. That's the most likely case in my opinion. A dip towards 478 and a bounce after that. For Aapl is dipping a little bit. We have this like bearish structure. I think that we have resistance at 230 and key resistance at 232. Our support to watch for is going to be all the way down here towards our very, very key support at 227 and 225. So look for a little bit of a dip towards 227, if not 225, then a bounce after that. That's the most likely case in my personal opinion. For a few more, we're going to be going over Palantir real quick. We look a little bit more bullish from a technical standpoint, but notice the last couple of days it was range bound. We had 37.5, and we have a tendency of rejecting the 37s, and we like to get bought up around the 36s. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had 37.5, then rejecting and dip back down to 36.32, and we just continue to consolidate in this range. For Supermicro, we're also range bounded over here. We have this 460 area as resistance, and then we have this 435 areas or support. I wouldn't be surprised if we just continue to trade sideways. We could dip a little bit on Supermicro back down to 444 before it tries to rebound. But overall, it remains range bound. I think it's going to continue to do this for some time. For Rivian, we look more bearish. We had a big 11% red day. I was talking about how this was going to dip. I was talking about this for a while, and we finally got the dip. So I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of gap up tomorrow and then continue lower. It is still possible we dip close to the lower 11s before we try to get a bounce. But as of right now, and looks a little bit more bearish. For SoFi, we look a little bit more bearish, but we're going to be looking at a potential falling wedge structure. Look at 8.03 or $8 as support. If that fails us, we're going for 7.78. If that holds us, we could try to rebound for 8.4 or 8.35, like all the way up here. So I think we could be dipping a little bit more. I think we might actually go down to 7.8, then try to bounce. We look kind of weak right over here after that day on Friday. So watch and see what we end up doing. For the IWM Russell 2000, we have resistance around 224 and 226. We have support at 220. I wouldn't be surprised if we dip down towards 220, then we try to bounce off that. There might be a little bit of a dip here, and we'll see how we end up moving, so watch that very, very carefully. For AMD, we're trying to ride this 20 EMA very, very nicely. We have resistance around this 158 area, and we have support around 153. I wouldn't be surprised if we dip a bit and try to rebound all the way up towards 158, so watch and see how this ends up going. For ARM, we're actually dipping right over here. We have kind of like a double top like structure. So we have 139 as resistance. We have support at 136. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually dip a little bit as we have a double top. So 136 looks a lot more possible, a lot more probable for ARM. For Coinbase, we're kind of flat right here. We're just trading in a range. We like to get bought up around 165. We have resistance at 175. So I think we might just trade sideways for some time in this range, and then we're not really doing much. So I think we just trade sideways around 170. For Amazon, we look more bullish because of this structure and because of the fact that we have a gap to fill. So I think Amazon's going to be pushing for 193, if not 195 tomorrow. So look for a little bit more upside for Amazon. It's outperforming the market. It looks very strong right now. So the odds are favoring more upside, looking at our PPO and other factors like that. For Meta, we look like we're going to consolidate around this 560 area. It does like to consolidate around here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we just trade sideways around 560, maybe dip back down to 557, come back up and just continue to trade sideways. I think that's the most likely case. So we'll see how things end up reacting after that. But that's what I think Meta is going to most likely end up doing. Microsoft is also trading sideways right here. I think that there is a risk on Microsoft. So one issue I see is that we have a double top here and we kind of rejected here. So I expect us to test this 20 EMA tomorrow, the 434 area. So it might dip a little bit more. Then we'll see if we bounce off this. If we don't bounce off this, I think we dump down to 430. If we do bounce off 434, we could try to rebound. But look for a little bit of a dip tomorrow. We'll see if the market gets bought back up or not. There is going to be a risk of this dipping lower. So be careful on Microsoft. Google's trying to push. We have 165 as resistance. If this breaks, we're looking for 168. If we reject off 166, or 165, excuse me, then we could be dipping back down to 162. So look for 165. We'll see if this breaks. If it does break, we're looking for 168, and we'll see how things end up going. For Bitcoin, not Bitcoin, sorry, DJT. DJT is continuing to fall. I think we could be looking for 12.5 as our support. We might be dipping towards that before we try to bounce, so watch for that. The VIX is also dipping right now. We're looking for basically 16 flat as support, but we have this gap down here. So I think we could be dipping below 16 to hit 15 as the market tries to rebalance. The market may dip and then bounce as the VIX kind of pops, then drops down to fill this gap. That's the most likely case that I'm going to be looking for. For the 10-year treasury yield, we're kind of like pushing. We could actually dip a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if it dips just a bit more as the Fed is being more dovish. This is continuing to fall. There's a good chance that this could respect the downtrend. The dollar is kind of flat now. It's not really giving us the information it used to give us. It's very, very indecisive. So we have to give this a little bit more time to develop. So I want to make that very, very clear. I'm not really as worried about the dollar. So don't worry, guys. We'll give it the time it needs. The last thing I'm going to talk about is Tesla one more time. So Tesla's getting caught up in a lot of volatility in the markets. We'll see if Tesla gets a bigger drop or not. I think we're going to be testing 235. We'll see if we bounce off that. If we don't bounce off that, we're going all the way down to 229, and then we should bounce off that level. So we'll see how well Tesla does. Even if it does dip, guys, it's going to be completely fine. Tesla's still in an uptrend, got a nice accumulation right here, and there's a lot of potential for this to try to continue to fill these imbalances well above. We still have that gap to fill also at like 246. So there's confluences that suggest that Tesla has more upside potential. And then for the short term, there might be a small dip depending on how things end up going. So be prepared for all of that. But with that being said, guys, I just want to say I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. Today is Sunday. It's going to be the last day of the weekend. So before the market opens, just use this as time to just enjoy your guys' lives. I love to just take some time away sometimes from the markets and just relax, find peace, and just do other things. So hope you guys have a good night, day, or evening, wherever you guys are around the world. And just know that for the markets, I'll be back tomorrow. Before the market opens tomorrow, I'll give you guys a video where I talk about this data that's about to be released, and we'll see how the market looks during the pre-market session. But until then, enjoy some football. Have a very, very good night and day, guys, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next video, which is coming out tomorrow morning. Tesla to the moon, the long term is still very bright for the company. Don't forget, we have two big dates coming up. We have the deliveries report coming out on October 2nd. That's less than 2 weeks away. Then we have the robotaxi event on October 10th. So it's going to be huge. Can't wait to see what the future holds. With that being said, enjoy your guys' weekend. Do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys soon tomorrow on the next one. Thank you for listening, and peace out.